What's going on, guys? It's Jeff, and today I have updates when it comes to Detroit Lions OTAs. We've heard from Dan Campbell today, and he went into a ton of things, relevant things, to be honest with you. Updates on players, updates on past players now with Frank Ragnow, unfortunately, but injury updates. There's a lot to get to, so today I'm going to try my best to cover as much as I can. There's still more that he talked about, which you can check out the full press conference on the YouTube channel, Detroit Lions YouTube channel. The press conference. You can watch the whole thing. But today I'm going to highlight some of the more important stuff. So today, to start, I'm going to get into some injury updates. And a player that I guess we haven't spent a lot of time covering this offseason, but is dealing with an ACL injury, is linebacker Malcolm Rodriguez. Dan Campbell gave an update and said, quote, conservatively, November, end quote. So Malcolm Rodriguez won't be back until probably November, which is a little tricky. I mean, you're talking a couple months here for Malcolm Rodriguez. You already have Aleem McNeil. He's probably going to take a handful of games to come back. Even then, he'll be not rushed back. He'll be slowly back into the lineup before he's out there full time. Again, another player dealing with an ACL injury. But to be honest with you, this does remind me how thin they are at linebacker. Without Anzalone, if this whole thing with Anzalone goes sour. So it does kind of bring up the importance of making sure Anzalone's playing and he's out there, because you have Jack Campbell, you have Anzalone, you have Derek Barnes, but after that, you're getting into the Nowaskis and the Ben Niemans and Zach Cunningham, who they signed this offseason. So it's not great behind these guys. Malcolm was always a very good backup and someone that has started. So he's not going to be there for a handful of weeks. So at least he's coming back. He's in the last year of his contract. So I'm curious kind of what happens with him as well. He was a former 6th round draft pick for the Lions. But again, it kind of puts into perspective. You want Anzo back, man. More than just the veteran leadership, but someone that, again, without him, what direction are you going at linebacker? It kind of shows the importance of having Anzalone out there. But Dan also talked about the Frank Ragnow situation, which I do want to get into, and kind of the competition there. So first, I will play the clip of him talking about the departure of Frank Ragnow and kind of what their plans are now that he is gone, and then I'll play the clip of him actually addressing the Frank Ragnow retirement. But here's Dan Campbell on the options after Frank Ragnow's retirement. Let's take a listen to Dan Campbell.
Doesn't mean you won't have growing pains, but it can happen fast. You know, the development can happen fast. I'm saying, for example, you put Tate in there, and if not, you know, is it Graham by him at guard who's helping him out? Or is Graham your center? Or is it one of these other guys? Is it Kingsley? Is it? So we're going to have options. You know, that's why we're excited about training camp. We're going to find this out. You know, we're going to let these guys go at it. We just signed Tristan Colon. You know, there's another option. Don't know a lot about him because he just got here. But we're going to have plenty. We still got Yodi here. We got guys.
All right, so he talked about the new addition, Tristan Colon. I think I butchered his name in the video I put out breaking the news. So my apologies, disregard that. I am sometimes not all there in the head, but let's get to what Dan said. The competition, OTAs, training camp. I've already kind of stated what I think should happen and will happen. I think Graham is your starter at center week 1. As much as I love Tate's upside there, I don't think week 1 you're going to see Tate Ratledge at center. I think he's more of he's the future. I think, you know, as much as the Lions, Dan and Brad have talked about making sure guys are comfortable at the positions they've played. The big one that comes to mind was, you know, Giovanni Manu. He was drafted, and then there was talk, well, he could play guard. And then they're like, well, maybe we can't rush him into playing guard. Maybe he should just play tackle. It's what he's been playing. You know, like stuff like that. You know, it's easy to say out loud, like, well, he's their center. You know, Tate Ratledge is the center this year. Pump the brakes. I think he's the future at center. I don't know if immediately he'll play center. And they've done that with other players as well, where they draft them, move them out of position, and then they go, well, we probably should just let them be comfortable at the position they played. Same with Ennis Rakestraw. They tried him out at nickel. Dan talked about that in the presser. And then he has played outside corner. So let's just leave him there. So I think that's kind of going to be a similar situation with Tate Ratledge. He excelled at guard at Georgia. I know he was the backup center. I'm not saying he can't do it. He could definitely do it. But year 1 as a rookie on a Super Bowl contender, you're probably going to go with the guy who has experience, not only in the offense, but that rapport with Jared. He snapped a ton of footballs in the NFL against NFL defensive tackles, NFL defensive linemen. So I think it's Graham. Whether you're excited or not about it, it's my prediction. Now, could things change? Could Tate excel in training camp at center and beat him out? Yes, he could. And Tate could be the exception and just be excellent at center, which it has been done in the league before where guys haven't played a position and they excel at it. It's just my prediction. I think Graham's your starter week 1. And throughout the season, if Graham plays himself out of that position, maybe you have a different outcome. But again, are you going to move Tate to center midseason? It's tricky for sure. That's why the signing of Tristan Colon gives you some security because he's played center. He's played 200 plus snaps at center in the NFL. He played center in college, so he has a ton of experience there, played guard as well. So it's good they signed him, have someone with some versatility. But Dan also talked about Frank's retirement. So I do want to play this clip of him talking about Frank and the whole situation because he did clarify the contract side of it, which was a storyline. So let's listen to Dan clarify some things about Dan Campbell or Frank Ragnow.
Football player, man of the community, man, he's done it all, and he would be sorely missed, man. He, one of the greatest memories I have of Frank was divisional against Tampa Bay, 4th and 1. We run downhill to Craig Reynolds, man, and he's got big boy. And he hits him, and he kind of hits the knee, and then he has to get back up and tie up the block. We score, man. It was huge, this type of player he was. So he'll be missed. But, man, this train goes on. Train rolls on. And it's the next man up. And so we will be ready to go when camp hits. We'll be ready to go. We got plenty of versatility up there. We like the guys that we drafted. We like our free agents that we brought in, the young guys, Kingsley being one of those guys, among others. So I got all the respect for Frank Ragnow. And, man, I love him to death. And the other thing is, quite frankly, some of the stuff about contract talk, that's disrespectful. That's not what this is ever about. So, anyway, love you, Frank. Appreciate you.
So the clarification there on the contract stuff, because that was a storyline written by pretty credible people here locally. And I'm not going to sit here and try and discredit writers because they got something wrong or incorrect. I'm not going to do that. It happens. It's the business. You say things, or you have a source that says something and you trust that source and you report it and it ends up being wrong. They're not going to bat 1,000. So I'm not going to take the time to go at these reporters because it doesn't really matter in this case. It's okay. They got it wrong. And Dan clarified that as well. It's, the contract stuff's a little ridiculous. That's fine. Frank, why he retired had more to do with self-reflection. Hey, I've dealt with a lot of injuries. I know he talked about being healthy, but still he has the inoperable toe. So that's a decision Frank had to make for his family, of course. He still has a ton of football he could have played. But again, that's not my decision to make. That's Frank Ragnow's decision to make. I think he's earned that too. He's been the Iron Man as much as he's been hurt. He's playing through injury. I mean, he played through a fractured throat. So at least Dan did clarify that. And to his point about competition, it's going to be a absolute battle come training camp, because when you lose an all-pro player, as much as Dan's motto is next man up, it's just not the case with an all-pro player. It's not. I mean, you could tell me I'm crazy. It's a little different. For example, the Eagles had Jason Kelce. He retired, but they were grooming a center in Cam Jurgens for years before he eventually stepped up. So he got to learn from Jason Kelce. He got to be out there, practice, OTAs, training camp, repeat. And he got to really learn the NFL. He got to play. Like, it's a little different. You're like, well, look at Cam Jurgens. He just excelled. Well, no one talks about the years he had to prepare for that. You know what I mean? It's a little different now. They haven't really been grooming anyone. Tate was just drafted. And thank goodness Brad has been planning ahead of time. But this next man up thing, yes, in theory, it's true. But when you talk about Frank and he's an all-pro, he's going to be in the Lions Ring of Honor. And I'm not going to disrespect Frank, the player, and say that, yeah, next man up, they'll be fine. They won't. They're going to regress. The offensive line, they won't be as good as they have, dominant as they have been. It's just the reality, man. You don't want to discredit Frank and the impact he had on this team. You just can't. He's an all-pro player. He's one of the best at his position. And now you're going to Graham Glasgow, potentially, who isn't even a top 30-plus center. He's just not. We went through the PFF ranking yesterday on the show, and, in all the centers on there, you're like, yep, that's fair. Graham's not in that conversation. I think he's fine. He's a fine player. Even when healthy, he's fine. He's 33 years old. I mean, now we also can't have unfair expectations for Graham Glasgow. You just have to understand what he is. And now Tate, I'm excited for. But again, I'm saying year one, this season. I think he'll grow. He'll have ups and downs, but eventually Tate's going to be a really good player. Same with Mahogany. I think Mahogany's going to show a lot of flashes. So it's more about the interior. It's Mahogany through a full season, which I'm confident in, but still we have to see it. And then Tate as a rookie. And then you have Graham, who's just been inconsistent. So there are some question marks up front. It is one of the bigger kind of storylines for the Lions. But another thing that he talked about was the secondary. And you have guys like Avonte Maddox and you have DJ Reed out there. He also talked about Ennis Rakestraw. So let's play the clip of him talking about the secondary and why he's excited about it. But here's Dan Campbell on that.
I know this, the addition of Reed, Maddox, man, that looks good. Glad we got those guys. Man, they're going to fit right in with us. So I can go down the list here, but those are a couple of guys probably that I think of.
I'm excited. You got depth in the secondary. That is the thing. Right? We could talk about all the negatives, but the positives certainly is what they've added, right? DJ Reed, they replaced Carlton Davis, and whether or not you think Carlton's a better player or not, you look at the totality of the secondary. Avonte Maddox, who can play safety. He has experience playing nickel. He's got some versatility. DJ Reed, I think he's a pretty good corner when healthy, and he's shown that through his time with the Jets. He's a competitor. We had Tyler Conklin on last week, and he's a former teammate of DJ Reed, had nothing but great things to say about him. So I'm excited about DJ Reed. And then the Terrion Arnold jump. I mean, what does he look like in year two? We look at historically in the NFL and year one corners, if they do struggle, if they're good, they'll end up taking that step in year two and year three. So for Terrion Arnold and DJ Reed, there's some potential there, them playing together. And he also complimented Ennis Rakestraw and said that, it's up to him. He's been competing. He's looked pretty good so far in OTAs. Again, it's basically the pajama Olympics, underwear Olympic, whatever you want to use, terminology. You can't take much from OTAs. You have to wait till training camp when they can hit, because Ennis, he can hit. I want to see this man thrive come training camp, because he'll have opportunities. Injuries are going to happen, not to the extent of last year, but injuries are going to happen. And with Ennis Rakestraw out there, it's a good opportunity for him to kind of see what he can do. Again, he's not going to be playing nickel, at least from what Dan said, but outside corner, let's say Terrion gets banged up for a play or a couple plays or out for a game, you got to know, hey, is Ennis that guy who can step up and come play? Or is it going to be a situation where Rock Ya-Sin comes in and now we're looking at the second round pick going, what's going on with Ennis Rakestraw? He didn't get to play a lot last year really at all. So I'm excited for him to kind of see what he can become. Now, Dan did compliment three players on offense. He talked about the weapons, Jahmyr Gibbs, Jameson Williams, Sam Laporta. All of them are having great OTAs so far. Again, it's OTAs, but when you hear Dan compliment him, it does mean something. And it's exciting because John Morton, there's a theory I have, and I don't know where you guys are at with it. He seems to be, I think John Morton is so excited to have a guy like Jameson Williams. I think he's so fired up. And I know that J-Mo's never going to be, I don't think, on the Lions leading the team in catches. I think it's going to be Amon-Ra St. Brown. But when you talk about production, he had 1,000 yards last year. There's no doubt in my mind he increases that this year. No doubt in my mind. I think Amon-Ra still leads the team in receiving yards, but I think J-Mo is going to be more of a priority. And Dan talked about how John's trying to work in some things to the offense to get those guys in isolation, make them really a big part of this offense. And Jahmyr Gibbs is another part of that. He's a top favorite to be Offensive Player of the Year. So, I mean, whether or not you believe that, with Dave Montgomery splitting the backfield, it's still a guy who had 2,000 yards basically from scrimmage and someone who broke the Detroit Lions total touchdown record. So he's a player to watch. I said this, and it's just something we talked about on the show yesterday with the offensive line. And it feels like the identity of the Lions the last couple of years, not feels like it has been the offensive line. But when you look in the future, I don't think, yes, they're still everything's going to run through that offensive line, but I don't think they'll be as dominant. You're really looking at all these skill position players. I mean, they haven't left. You still have Jahmyr Gibbs. You still have Jameson Williams. You have Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta, Dave Montgomery. You have all these guys. Now you drafted Isaac Tesla, Tim Patrick. You just have so many pass catchers, playmakers all over the field. So it's really about getting the ball to those guys and letting them just work, and maybe getting the ball to them quickly, so you don't have to have Jared sit back there and you're relying on Graham to hold up, or the interior. Because I'm not worried about as much about Tate or Christian Mahogany, but still getting the ball out quickly, giving it to the playmakers. and letting those guys work. It's going to be really the identity of this team moving forward. It's just the reality until we can see what Mahogany and Ratledge can become, which I think will be pretty good players, but we still got to see it, man, out there on the field. Let me know what you guys think of everything Dan talked about, anything that stood out to you, anything you agree with, disagree with, let me know. And we'll be live tonight, 8 to 10 p.m., as always, every weekday, Monday through Friday. Check it out. But until then, get your merchandise, subscribe. Make sure everyone that's watching these videos are subscribed. And I'll catch you guys next time. Hey, what's going on there? It's Jeff Iafrate. Appreciate you for finishing the video. You can check out one of the videos here suggested or show support by commenting, liking, and subscribing. And buy your merchandise, officialctsports.com.